Kevin Hart built a reputation that most people in Hollywood spend an entire lifetime chasing. Massive wealth, major production ventures, lucrative streaming partnerships, and a level of influence that placed him among the industry's biggest names. On paper, it looked like the ultimate success story. But then came a moment that changed the conversation completely. And believe me, it was not a controversial joke that put him under the microscope. It was a statement many now believe was not true. Even more surprising, there is evidence that has people questioning everything.
Were you surprised by people's reaction?
From the roast?
Yeah.
Not from the people that aren't aware of what a roast is, right? Like,
I mean, the general public.
I'm not surprised, but you here's where we're like falling into a weird space. Okay, the roast isn't a new format of comedy
At all.
The roast and roasting is a specific format that has existed for years.
Forever.
Right? Roasts are meant to be brutal. It is a style of comedy. It is hard-hitting.
Sure, a roast is still a roast. Nobody is denying that. Comedy has always tested boundaries. Richard Pryor tested boundaries. Eddie Murphy tested boundaries. Dave Chappelle tested boundaries. But the part Kevin Hart does not want people focusing on is this. There is a huge difference between challenging audiences and deciding which people are shielded from ridicule and which are not. Kevin Hart held the most influence in that room, more influence than anyone else on that stage. He was the host, he was the producer, and he exercised that influence strategically, just not when it came to George Floyd. Let's revisit the Netflix roast. Tony Hinchcliffe steps onto that stage in front of millions of viewers and makes a joke about George Floyd, a man who was killed on camera while calling out for his mother, and the punchline centered on the fact that he could not breathe. The crowd falls quiet. Some people laugh uneasily. Kevin Hart remains seated and smiling. Then Kevin Hart appears on The Breakfast Club and says this.
Yo, I couldn't control anything. I couldn't get jokes removed. It was a live production. I don't know what y'all expect me to do. Like, what, should I have gotten up and attacked them? No, right? It was a live production. I couldn't do anything, right? I couldn't get no jokes removed.
Sure, a roast is still a roast. Nobody is denying that. Comedy has always tested boundaries. Richard Pryor tested boundaries. Eddie Murphy tested boundaries. Dave Chappelle tested boundaries. But the part Kevin Hart does not want people focusing on is this. There is a huge difference between challenging audiences and deciding which people are shielded from ridicule and which are not. Kevin Hart held the most influence in that room, more influence than anyone else on that stage. He was the host, he was the producer, and he exercised that influence strategically, just not when it came to George Floyd. Let's revisit the Netflix roast. Tony Hinchcliffe steps onto that stage in front of millions of viewers and makes a joke about George Floyd, a man who was killed on camera while calling out for his mother, and the punchline centered on the fact that he could not breathe. The crowd falls quiet. Some people laugh uneasily. Kevin Hart remains seated and smiling. Then Kevin Hart appears on The Breakfast Club and says this.
Hinchcliffe got a joke. Tony Hinchcliffe, the man who disrespected George Floyd, had the luxury of getting jokes removed about himself as well. Kevin Hart had jokes removed about himself. They took out jokes about Trump and Melania. And I'm trying to understand, if you were able to get jokes removed, why couldn't you just do your people a favor? Man, hey, bro, this man is disrespecting somebody who was brutally murdered. Let's not air this. If we're not gonna air jokes about Melania and Donald Trump and Tony Hinchcliffe and like Kevin Hart, then we should at least extend George Floyd the same courtesy.
According to Kevin Hart, he had no ability to remove jokes. That is the claim he made publicly in front of millions of viewers. But there is one major issue with that narrative. It does not line up with what reportedly happened behind the scenes. Kevin Hart allegedly had 18 jokes cut from the roast. 18. Not one, not a handful, but 18 different jokes were reportedly removed following Kevin Hart's input. Jokes involving Trump were cut. Jokes involving Melania were cut. Jokes aimed at Tony Hinchcliffe were cut. Jokes directed at Kevin Hart himself were cut. Yet the joke about George Floyd remained? That one survived the editing process. And now viewers are being told he had no influence over what stayed in the show? That is why critics are not calling it an oversight. They are calling it a decision. And that is where the controversy becomes impossible to ignore.
People who are still suffering from anxiety, from trauma, especially the family. So for Kevin to get on that show and talk about it and then be so indignant about, no, I didn't hear the interview when Lauren said, did you hear the interview that I did with his family member? No, and now I won't listen to it. It was almost as if he was angry about the possibility of something that might have made him feel bad about.
Take a moment and really think about what that suggests. Tony Hinchcliffe, the same comedian who sparked outrage with a George Floyd joke on a massive stage, reportedly had jokes about himself removed before the show aired. Kevin Hart protected his own image. Kevin Hart protected Trump. Kevin Hart protected Melania. Yet George Floyd's family, a family that watched one of the most painful moments imaginable become global news, did not receive that same consideration. They did not get a warning. They did not get a courtesy call. They got nothing. And when criticism started pouring in, Kevin Hart did not come forward with an apology. He did not publicly accept responsibility. Instead, he went on a major radio platform and pushed back against the narrative. That is the part many people still cannot move past. Not necessarily the joke itself, but the explanation that followed. Because when someone makes a statement that viewers believe conflicts with the facts already available, it naturally creates a bigger question. What else might not be adding up behind the scenes?
You fold for money, you're no longer cool. Your rock star status is taken if you'll do anything for the devil's dollar. I don't respect you. I don't think you cool. I don't give how much money they give you to betray our culture. You are a goofy.
You're even goofier if you already have the money. You already play the game. You already beat these people at their own game. Once they give you 100, 150, 200, 300 million, you already beat them at their game, man. Like at what point do the sellouts realize, bruh, I don't have to sell out no more? Like, at what point do sellouts think they won the game? Because if the goal to sell out is to get the M's, get the success, get the opportunities, once you got any opportunity, once you worked your way up to a point where you can't be canceled, then why? Like, are you just doing it for the love of the game? Because it can't be for more opportunities. Like, you already got you're now an opportunity maker. Kevin Hart is cemented in entertainment history. He is a legend. What can they really do to Kevin Hart if he decides to stand up for his people and be a strong, powerful black man? What can they do?
This is the part of the story that many people find the most disappointing. Kevin Hart never had to put himself in this position. The man has accumulated extraordinary wealth over the course of his career. He owns a production company. He has major partnerships with Netflix. He built a business empire from the ground up, from the streets of North Philadelphia to becoming one of the most recognizable entertainers in the world. He achieved a level of success that very few people ever reach. He was not dependent on the industry's money anymore. He was not dependent on anyone's approval anymore. By every measure, he had already earned his independence. And that is exactly the point Dame Dash was trying to make. And whether people agree with Dame Dash or not, that argument resonates with a lot of viewers. Because eventually there comes a stage where financial survival is no longer the issue. You have already secured the opportunities. You already possess the influence and leverage most people spend a lifetime chasing. At that point, the decisions you make are no longer about necessity. They become a reflection of character. They become a reflection of who you really are when nothing is forcing your hand.
That was said were very disrespectful. Like, I'm a funny guy, but there's certain things in the hood you don't say, in certain blocks, like pause. You don't talk about mothers. You don't tell niggas to suck your pause. You just don't play with people that are dead. Like, you don't play with, it's not funny. It's in poor taste. I mean, it might be a certain kind of humor, but I think in this temperature, based on the environment and the accusations, I just wouldn't see somebody volunteering to do that. And I felt like that could potentially destroy any iota of his career because people were able to tell him the truth to his face. How terrible his movies are, how he'll take $1, and how they could disrespect him while he's there and say it's humor. So people would have started saying and all that other shit, would that have been all right? Where is the line drawn? There's humor, but then there's disrespect. And that was a public humiliation for our culture, to me. And that's not why I put Kev on. So that was embarrassing to me.
For years, Dame Dash has been repeating the same message, while critics dismissed him at every turn. People called him bitter, washed up, out of touch, and even irrelevant. But in moments like this, many believe his argument deserves a closer look because he keeps returning to the question that others avoid, and that question is difficult to ignore. At what point does someone stop acting like they are still fighting to survive after they've already reached the top? Kevin Hart has the wealth. Kevin Hart has the global recognition. Kevin Hart has the industry relationships. If he had walked into that room and said, "That joke is not making the final cut because George Floyd's family deserves more respect than that," what real consequence would he have faced? Were they going to remove him from a project he helped create? Were they going to suddenly walk away from business agreements that were already in place? Most people looking at the situation would probably say no. Realistically, very little would have changed. Yet that stand was never taken. And for many observers, that decision speaks louder than any explanation that came afterward.
For the devil, bro. You already got all the money in the world. You got everything in the world. At this point, bro, you know, if you're still selling out after making, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars, then that's just your character. That's just your soul. But the worst news of all is, Dame Dash is seeing this going on. He is formulating his opinion about you, and he's on his way to sit with Farrakhan. Now, I'm sure Farrakhan probably already seen it, but just in case Farrakhan didn't see it, Dame Dash is about to tell Farrakhan how you sold out black people to the corporate infrastructure. There's one person in the world who I think quite possibly is probably more popular than Jesus in the black community, and that's Farrakhan. Now that sounds like blasphemous to say, but why I say he's more popular than like Jesus is because there's black Muslims, there's black Christians, there's black Jewish people. But the one thing that all these religions acknowledge, again, there are even black atheists, but the one thing that all these religions acknowledge, and even the unreligious people, is that Farrakhan is essentially like the de facto leader. Like, Farrakhan is the only black person who does a State of the Union speech, and we watch that more than we watch the actual president do the State of the Union, right? So when that man now has a perception of you, if that man is disappointed in you, that's crazy. That is crazy.
That detail often gets overlooked, but it matters more than people realize. Dame Dash is not just another commentator throwing opinions from the sidelines. He is someone who backed Kevin Hart when many others were not paying attention. He saw potential in him, invested in him, and helped create opportunities during the early stages of his journey. Now he finds himself watching someone he once supported sitting on a national platform, while in his view, parts of black culture are being mocked in front of the world. That goes beyond ordinary disappointment. For some, it feels like a personal betrayal. And Dame Dash added another observation that makes the entire situation even more striking. He revealed that he was watching all of this unfold while on a flight headed to meet with Farrakhan. Let that sink in for a moment.
Dave Chappelle would have never let that happen. Cat Williams ripped him, Paul, and he had to say, "Thank you, sir, may I have another?" From what I understood.
This conversation goes far beyond religion. At its core, it is really about legacy. Farrakhan represents something to many people in the Black community that extends beyond faith, politics, or the entertainment industry itself. For supporters, he symbolizes accountability, discipline, and responsibility. So when Dame Dash says he was on his way to meet with Farrakhan while watching this controversy unfold, he is describing something much bigger than a news cycle. That is not merely negative publicity. That is the kind of moment that can follow a public figure for years. Kevin Hart can release another 100 movies. He can sign more deals and headline countless additional Netflix specials. But the people who watched that roast and felt George Floyd's name was being used as a punchline are unlikely to forget what they saw. Now let's widen the lens for a moment, because this story is about more than just Kevin Hart. It speaks to a debate that has existed in Hollywood for generations. Time and time again, Black entertainers reach a certain level of success and find themselves facing a difficult decision. Do they remain closely tied to the communities that supported them from the beginning? Or do they prioritize access, business opportunities, and relationships with the people who control those opportunities? Many point to Richard Pryor as someone who stayed true to his audience. That decision may have strained certain industry relationships, but it helped cement his legendary status. Many supporters say Dave Chappelle made a similar choice. He famously walked away from a massive deal because he believed the cost was greater than the reward. Others make the same argument about Cat Williams. Despite years of criticism and controversy, he continues to stand by the positions that made him popular with his core supporters. And then there are public figures who critics believe chose a different path. In those cases, people argue that preserving influence within powerful circles became more important than maintaining the trust of the community that helped elevate them. According to critics, Kevin Hart faced one of those defining moments on a stage watched by millions, and many viewers believe they saw exactly which path he decided to take.
You surprised by people's reaction?
From the roast?
Yeah.
Not from the people that aren't aware of what a roast is, right? Like,
I mean,
Dave Chappelle and Cat Williams are two names that seem to surface every time the conversation turns to integrity in the entertainment business. People bring them up because both men encountered moments that could have easily pressured them into taking a different path. Dave Chappelle reportedly had a massive $50 million opportunity in front of him. He chose to walk away from it. Cat Williams faced criticism and resistance from powerful voices across the industry, yet he continued speaking his mind, regardless of the consequences. Neither man was forced to take those positions. They made those choices willingly. That is why many supporters view their actions as examples of conviction rather than convenience. Critics argue that Kevin Hart was also presented with a moment where he had significant influence and the ability to make a different decision. In their view, he chose not to use that influence in the way they expected. And what makes the controversy even more frustrating for some observers is the belief that he still does not fully understand why so many people reacted so strongly. That disconnect may be the biggest issue of all. Do you notice what is happening here? Even after the criticism, even after reports surfaced about the removed jokes, and even after public figures like Dame Dash weighed in, the conversation is still being framed as if critics simply do not understand comedy or the purpose of a roast. But that is not the issue many people are debating. Most viewers understand exactly what a roast is supposed to be. What continues to raise questions is why certain jokes were reportedly removed while others remained untouched. What people struggle to understand is how someone can claim to have little influence over the final product while reports suggest multiple jokes were edited out. What people struggle to understand is how a person with enormous influence, resources, and industry power could witness a controversy unfold and still leave so many supporters feeling unheard. That is the heart of the criticism, and no amount of explaining it away as just a roast has fully addressed those concerns for many viewers. The bigger question may be one Kevin Hart eventually has to answer for himself. Decades from now, when people look back on this era of entertainment, which names will be remembered for standing on principle when it mattered most? Many people believe Dave Chappelle will be part of that conversation. Many believe Cat Williams will be part of that conversation as well. When it comes to Kevin Hart, however, critics argue that the answer feels less certain today than it once did. And that uncertainty is what makes this story so fascinating. According to his critics, the situation did not require a grand gesture. It may have only required a conversation, a difficult decision behind closed doors, or a willingness to prioritize people over optics. In their view, that opportunity came and went. They believe a different choice was made. They believe that choice has permanently altered the way some members of the public see him, and now Kevin Hart has to live with whatever legacy that decision ultimately creates. Dame Dash summed up his perspective in blunt terms, arguing that once someone compromises certain principles, the image people once admired begins to fade. Kevin Hart spent years building a reputation that turned him into one of entertainment's biggest success stories. He earned that status through relentless work and undeniable talent. Yet critics argue that a single moment can sometimes overshadow years of accomplishments. The money remains, the films remain, the business deals remain, but trust is a different kind of currency, and once people feel that trust has been broken, rebuilding it can be far more difficult than signing another contract. So now the conversation shifts to you. Do you think Kevin Hart can recover from this controversy, or do you believe this is a defining moment that permanently changes his public image? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy deep dives into the stories, controversies, and industry conversations that mainstream coverage often overlooks, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for more. Until next time, keep questioning the narrative and keep it real. Peace.